became an outspoken critic of the gender pay gap when you famously tweeted this about how much LeBron James was making in 2018, writing, 154 million must be nice. We over here looking for a mill, but Lord, let me get back in my lane. Right. You got a lot of people talking about that, and you say it actually helped you find your voice.
Yes.
I can't even put into words how powerful the Black woman is. You just really feel like you're just the queen at everything that you do, and you don't let up. To have a whole statue of myself in the South and bringing a franchise to a WNBA appearance in the finals, that same Black girl that couldn't sleep in someone's house because of the color of her skin could be the exact same Black girl that is playing for other Black girls to look up to know that they can accomplish their goals no matter who is in front of them.
And look, I'm glad the appearance of Caitlin Clark has galvanized people to actually care about this, because I've been there when the players, when they somewhat recently renegotiated another collective bargaining agreement. And I recall very vividly when they were in the process of negotiations and they were talking about how they needed to have bigger salaries so that the players, by the way, don't have to play overseas, because everybody was wondering, why is Brittany Griner over in Russia playing overseas if she's in the WNBA? Well, the reason she is because in other countries, and this to me is an indictment of the U.S. and all these other countries whose human rights for women are not nearly as far along as the U.S. In Russia, they're paying a healthy 6 figures and 7 figures for women to come play. So what does that say about the U.S.?
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this picture right here, okay? Because this picture right here has triggered the mob, okay? They're upset. They're upset. And I want you guys to take a good guess in regards to why they are upset. Because this picture comes as news has dropped of Caitlin Clark, who just got drafted into the WNBA. She has received a signature shoe deal from Nike that could be worth upwards of $10 to $20 million, a massive shoe deal. Now, anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together understands why Caitlin Clark is receiving this deal, even though she's a rookie, even though she hasn't played in the league yet. Everybody already knows, because Caitlin Clark damn near is a household name, okay? Everybody's talking about her. She's bringing a lot of attention to WNBA, and Nike, who, for as much as I don't like their woke ideology, I do have to respect their insights when it comes to marketing, okay? I mean, there's not many companies out there that do marketing better than Nike. They understand that, hey, this woman is going to sell some shoes, okay? So we're going to give her a deal. We're going to give her an exclusive signature shoe deal, and we're going to pay her for it, okay? Because we think that we can make some money off of this, right? Now, she gets this deal, and the current list of active WNBA players with a signature shoe are Caitlin Clark, Sabrina, and Breanna Stewart. Now, I know of Sabrina, I think because of her connection to Kobe, so I'm familiar with her, and I've also heard of Breanna Stewart. Even though I don't watch the WNBA, I have actually heard of these athletes, right? I've heard of these athletes, okay? So I get why they have shoe deals, even though nobody watches the WNBA, at least yet. Maybe they, will start watching in the future, but we all understand why, right? We can get the gist of why they have shoe deals. However, again, this picture has triggered a lot of people, and you guys should be able to easily guess why, right? What characteristics do these 3 women all have in common that has triggered people? And who is triggered, okay? We should all understand immediately who's upset and why they're upset. Well, we know who was upset, right? The people that are upset are the Black liberal women of America who somehow, some way think that this is unfair, right? They're mad and they're upset because the WNBA is giving a signature shoe deal to Caitlin Clark, but they're not giving a signature shoe deal to WNBA players who happen to be Black, okay, Black women who they believe should get a shoe deal. Like, for example, Aja Wilson, who Jamel Hill says is a 2-time league MVP, 2-time WNBA champion, 2-time defensive player of the year, a finals MVP, a 5-time WNBA All-Star, and a best-selling author, is probably somewhere like this, right? So somewhere frustrated. Now, reasonable people like myself tried to explain to Jamel Hill that, hey, this woman is not getting a signature shoe because nobody knows who the hell Asia Wilson is, right? I've never heard of her before these people started boohoo-whining and crying about her not having a signature shoe. But Jemele Hill doesn't seem to understand. She says, well, why isn't Asia Wilson marketable? College grad, national and WNBA champion, best-selling author, Olympic gold medalist. What is she missing? I'm happy to entertain any substantive ideas. Okay, so again, clearly Jemele Hill doesn't understand capitalism, how capitalism works, okay? But we all know what these people are getting at, right? We all know what they're getting at here, as this person tweeted, in a league that's 70% black, okay? Which, by the way, I mean, if the league was 70% white, these same people will be crying about racism, right? Oh, well, that's not fair. The league should not be 70% white, right? This is what they'll be complaining about, okay? They will have an issue with that. But if it's 70% black, which, again, is by definition over-representative of the black population, oh, that's totally fine, right? Nobody sees an issue with that. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy here. Okay, so again, a lot of the woke revolutionaries aren't saying it out loud. They aren't saying it overtly. But what they're essentially saying is that there has to be some form of racism going on here, right? This is why they're crying about it, because I want you guys to understand the conversation at first was about how WNBA basketball players don't get paid enough. So Caitlin Clark, who's now a WNBA basketball player, gets paid a massive, fat, multi-million-dollar contract, something that these people have been begging for, and now all of a sudden they're crying about, well, why isn't this black woman getting paid, right? Why isn't Asia Wilson getting paid, okay? Again, it's funny how that works, okay? They said it was about WNBA players not getting paid enough. A WNBA player gets a massive contract with Nike, okay? She gets paid, and then they're still boohoo-whining and crying, right? They're still complaining about why this person isn't getting paid or why that person isn't getting paid, just because they see 3 white women that got a signature shoe deal from Nike.
Fans have been calling for Asia to get a shoe for as long as I can remember. There's so much demand for it. I saw a lot of people arguing that she's not marketable. And the irony of that was almost laughable, because the same day that Caitlin Clark's shoe deal dropped, Time released their list of 100 most influential people, and Asia was like a headliner of that list. The tribute to her was written by Tom Brady, who I don't think we can argue is a GOAT and super marketable. Asia has shown consistently that she's charismatic, she's excellent, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. She's a back-to-back champion. She won in college with South Carolina. They have a statue erected in her honor. Like, this woman could not be more marketable if she tried. And so for Nike to put her in the position where she then has to go on social media and kind of cool her fans and like urge them to be patient and almost like defend Nike, it's such a disappointment. But it's not a surprise, because Nike has done it before. They've shown how they treat their excellent Black women. I look back, obviously, I'm a huge track fan. Allison Felix is the most decorated female Olympian in track and field, period. 11 Olympic medals, 7 of them gold. When she got pregnant, they offered her 70% less on her contract. And when she pushed back, they told her to know her place. I am frustrated even like retelling that. So to know that history of Allison's exit from Nike, I can only imagine how things are happening behind closed doors with Asia. And so I hate that she's been placed in this position. Now she has to defend Nike, and then her fans are placed in a position to defend how marketable she is. And that should never happen.
Yeah, so you see, now you heard that, okay? This conversation is so frustrating for so many different reasons, okay? Because, you know, when it comes to conversations about capitalism and economics, what I try to explain to people is that for the most part, the only race that matters when it comes to capitalism is green, right? If companies can make $1, they don't give a damn about your race. And I am almost certain that's the case with Nike, considering how they have a history of giving out millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of dollars in sponsorships to Black athletes, right? I mean, their whole brand has been based off making money off of Black athletes. So this idea that they're trying to screw over a woman because she's Black is ridiculous, right? I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever based off the history of Nike and how they became a prominent brand, which is through endorsing black athletes. It makes absolutely zero sense. But what does make sense is the fact that compared to Caitlin Clark, who's damn near a household name, okay, Aja Wilson is a nobody. Okay, nobody knows who she is. And these people keep using these same silly arguments about, well, she was an MVP and she has this accolade and that accolade and she has a book and she's been on this show in Time Magazine. Okay, so the only thing that you're confirming is that despite her having all these accolades and an artificial push by the mainstream liberal media to market her, nobody knows who she is. The fact that she's had all of this artificial attention placed on her, all of these accolades in the WNBA, and nobody knows who she is, tells you everything you need to know about why Nike's not giving her a signature shoe, right? Because she is not marketable. Like, that is the definition of marketability, okay? Can we put you out there? Can we put your face out there? Can we put money behind your brand? And are we going to get a positive return on investment? That's the question. With her, I can already tell you that's not the case because, again, she's been artificially inflated by all of these outlets and nobody knows who she is. I didn't know who she was before making this video, and I still don't know who she is, right? To be quite honest with you, I don't know what team she plays for. I don't know what position she plays. I don't know anything about her, okay? And the reason why I don't know anything about her is because, one, nobody cares about the WNBA, right? And it is clear and obvious that she does not have the ability to make people care about the WNBA, right? Do people understand that? Okay. I do remember Sabrina when she was in college and how she got a whole bunch of attention. Okay. And I think that made people care more about the WNBA, right? It brought more viewership to the WNBA. But when it comes to this Aja Wilson woman, I can't tell you anything about her. I don't know anything about her. Okay. I really don't. And again, that I guarantee you is the same conversation that's happening in the Nike boardroom. Again, I'm not a fan of Nike as a company. Okay. I think that they are anti-American. Okay. I mean, they seem to be more concerned about being a brand of China, buy in for China, than being a brand for the United States. They push social justice and nonsense here in the United States of America. So again, I'm not a fan of the company, but I am a fan of capitalism. And I can tell you from a capitalist perspective why she's not getting a signature shoe deal, which, by the way, I'm not even sure if that's true. I don't even know. I mean, I've seen her with a shoe. I guess she did some type of shoe collaboration with Nike before in the past. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it was, but apparently it didn't sell that much, right? It was not that profitable. So therefore, they're not going to give her a signature shoe. They can't make any money. It is what it is. But I guarantee you they will make a lot of money off of Caitlin Clark's shoe. Has nothing to do with race, has everything to do with the profit motive. That's how capitalism works. But again, I'm not surprised that these people are so upset, is because these are the same people that complain about the so-called gender pay gap in the WNBA, right? They complain about how WNBA players don't make as much as NBA players. Now, again, the reason simple is because the WNBA does not make nearly as much as the NBA. I think the NBA brings in $10 billion, which I'm scratching my head on that. I'm like, how does the NBA bring in $10 billion? People still watching the NBA? I don't watch the NBA. I'm not a fan of the NBA. I think the NBA's product is the worst that it's been in a long time, okay, since the early 2000s, which is the last time I think that the NBA was actually great and entertaining. It's basically has fallen off since the 90s and the early 2000s. Basically since Michael Jordan retired. But regardless, the WNBA before 2023 was bringing in about $60 million or so per year. Now, according to estimates, reports, in 2023, they made about $200 million. $200 million. So you have, $60 to $200 million, depending on which estimate you want to go with. Let's go $200 million. $200 million WNBA revenue compared to $10 billion in NBA revenue. And the NBA is subsidizing the WNBA. If it wasn't for the NBA, the WNBA would not be able to survive. It wouldn't be a league, right? So basically, men are subsidizing these women, and you still got people boohoo, whining, crying sexism, talking about, this is a form of misogyny and that women are underpaid and all this other stuff. When it's like, you're not bringing in the revenue, you're not bringing in the money. And the funniest argument, the one that I really love the most, is the argument about the collective bargaining agreement and the fact that these women are saying, well, we're not asking to be paid the same as NBA players. We're just asking to get the same percentage of revenue that NBA players get, right? So NBA players get 50% of revenue paid in their salaries, and WNBA players, by some estimates, only get paid 10%. Well, you got to understand, that's not because there's some sort of sexism going on in which, women are just getting the bad end of the stick just because they're women. No. You know why women only get 10% of the revenue? Well, it's because if women got more than that, then literally nobody would invest in the league, right? The investors, the owners of these WNBA teams, which, by the way, the NBA owns about 50%, and then the WNBA teams themselves own the other 50%. Okay, so if you're an investor, right, if you're an owner of a WNBA team, you already are not turning a profit. Okay, so the league does not turn a profit. Your best hopes of getting your money back is to hope that the league grows substantially in revenue, because otherwise you're really burning a hole in your pocket. Okay, every single year you're not making a profit, you're not making any money, you're just making money off the valuation, right? The hopes that the league will become more popular, the revenue will increase, and then hopefully you can sell your stake at a higher price than what you bought it at in the future. That's the hope. Okay, but again, if you had to pay the WNBA players 50% of the league revenue, where's the money left for the owners? Where's the money left? The league is already not turning a profit. So now you're saying that, well, on top of not turning a profit, and you're only paying the WNBA players 10% of revenue, if you now have to pay the WNBA players 50%, and on top of that, you got to foot the bill for the venues, the operations, travel, all the other things that comes along with running a WNBA team, what's left over for the owners? Nothing, right? What's left over for the investors? Nothing. So again, quite literally, there is no room. There is no room to pay WNBA players 50% of league revenue, because the league revenue is not enough to turn a profit. Again, people don't understand basic economics, basic business. And here's the thing. I believe that that's going to change in the future. I think that players like a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese, who are marketable, who people do care about, who basically have become household names for the most part, I think that they're going to bring the league more popularity. They're going to bring in more revenue. And eventually, when you get to the point where you have that type of leverage, where you can negotiate a deal where you're splitting 50% of revenues, then it'll happen. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the owners will say, okay, well, without these players, can we make money? They say, no, okay, well, we need the players, and, this is what they're demanding, then we have to pay them. That's how it works, right? That's how negotiations work. That's how capitalism works. However, if you're talking about a league that's being subsidized by the NBA, aka men, okay, being subsidized by men, okay, is not making a profit, and you're trying to use leverage in order to say that you should get paid more equitably, right? You should be getting paid 50% of revenues when you don't bring in enough revenue in order to even sustain the league by itself. That is nonsense, right? No investor, no good businessman would ever go for something like that. Never, right? These women are lucky to even have a league, right? They're lucky to even have a league. So to hear all this boohoo whining and complaining about what they get paid is silly to me. It really is, because I think it's a stretch for them to get paid $100K a year, right? I think $100K a year to play basketball, really, okay? $100K a year, again, that's more than what the average American gets paid. You got Americans that work much harder jobs that, in my opinion, are much more important for society as a whole, getting paid $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year that are vastly underpaid. Okay, and to sit here and talk about female basketball players being underpaid is nonsense. It's ridiculous. The entitlement is incredible. It really is. First and foremost, these people understand nothing about business. They understand nothing about economics. But on top of that, they just want to cry and complain just to cry and complain. Evidence by the fact that they've been boohoo whining and crying about WNBA players not getting paid. One gets paid, and then all of a sudden they still boohoo whining and crying about why this one ain't getting paid or why that one ain't getting paid. And essentially they're doing it based off race. But again, it just goes to show you guys, it doesn't matter what these players get. You're still going to have people that's going to boohoo, whine, and cry and say it's not enough, because enough is never enough for these people. Again, I think it's a blessing for them to even have a league, considering how it's not profitable. It is a blessing, but yet they're still whining and complaining. It blows my mind, and it pisses me off. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.